potential targets, because obviously, because of the nature of this, with 2 incidents, there is the potential that this is a double act of terrorism, and they are worried about other targets.
All right, let's go back to the building itself. John, you work the police radio, if you would, for just a minute. The FBI is already investigating reports that a plane was actually hijacked before this collision, this incident, this attack occurred at the World Trade Towers. In Washington at the moment, the presumption is that this is a terrorist attack, according to ABC's John McWethy, though it's very difficult at the moment for anybody to get a clear appreciation of what has actually happened, because it has happened so quickly. First attack coming just before 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and the second attack, which we could all watch, those of us who are watching television, occurring at 9:03, just 3 minutes after. The president is in Florida, and he has already been told of what is happening. These trade towers have always been, and you may have heard it already this morning, regarded as a prime target for this particular act of terrorism. As you know, there was terrorism at the World Trade Center before 1993. There was a huge bombing attack on the trade centers. These are the 2 at the southwestern corner of the island of Manhattan, just prime pieces of real estate of interest to anyone who wishes to hit either New York City or the United States in a very, very visible and vulnerable way. We have with us at the moment Lindsey Grimm, a witness who was in the building on the phone. Lindsey, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Can you tell me what you know?
Well, I actually, just to clear things up, I wasn't in the building. I was in the World Financial Center, which is directly behind it.
Okay.
And our part of the building faces the section, the courtyard where the World Trade Center is. So we ran to the window right after we felt this kind of this sonic boom, as if it were an earthquake, and something just wasn't right. We ran to the window and somebody yelled, "Oh my God, a plane just flew into the World Trade Center."
Is this what we think of as the first one or the second one, Lindsey?
It was the first one, because I was actually outside for the second one.
And the first one appears to have gone into the southern tower, am I correct?
Correct.
And the second one, did you see the second one?
I had my back facing. I was running as fast as well, not running, but walking at a brisk pace away from the 2 buildings when I heard it, and people just started screaming and running.
Now, you know the area fairly well, working down there. Is 9 o'clock in the morning the time when people have gathered in very large number? People get there early or get there later?
Yeah, I actually just happened. I usually get here a little after 9, and I happen to be here early for a meeting this morning. So, yeah, I mean, you see the general amount of traffic about 9 o'clock. Is that when it happened, right at 9?
No, just before and just after 9.
Okay.
In that there have been 2. Can you see outside at the moment as to anything that's happening?
I am outside.
And where are you and what are you seeing?
I am west of the 2 buildings, looking directly at them, and it's difficult to look at. I'll tell you that much.
This is not an area which is easy to reach for emergency services. These 2 buildings hug the Hudson River. There's only the West Side Drive that comes up there. Is there a large amount of emergency equipment descending on the place?
There sure is. As soon as I got out of the building, obviously the first thing you're surrounded by is siren noise everywhere, and you can hear it coming by now, even still. Anything else you know that you'd like to add? Just as I was coming out of the building, I heard somebody sort of ushering people away, and they were saying, "You guys got to get out of here, it's a bomb."
Many thanks, Lindsey Grimm, who saw this occurring, at least the first, hesitate to call it an attack. The first incident, we'll continue to call it for now, and very much the second one now. That's what it looks like. Both of the towers in the Twin Trade Towers are now on fire. We have no idea whatsoever the measure of casualties inside or the measure of damage inside, though you can only imagine it. The New York City Office of Emergency Management said to us a short while ago they do not know what happened yet. Want to check in very quickly with the President of the United States, John Cochran, who was the President in Florida. John?
Peter, as you know, the President's down in Florida talking about education. He got up out of his hotel suite this morning, was about to leave. Reporters saw the White House Chief of Staff, Andy Card, whisper into his ear. Then reporters said to the President, "Do you know what's going on in New York?" He said he did, and said he will have something to say about it later. His first event is about a half an hour at an elementary school in Sarasota, Florida.
Thanks, John. John Cochran with the President. President's in Florida today pushing his education reform. It will get wiped off the agenda today in view of this extraordinarily serious accident. For those of you who don't know, the Twin Trade Towers, and it's a popular destination for tourists when they come to New York City. It has financial offices in it. It has government offices. It has lots of access on the top above where this incident actually occurred, where tourists come. It's one of the great views in New York City, and people gather there, certainly at the foot of the building, fairly early in the morning, to be able to go and see it. The two collisions, the two incidents have occurred about 2/3 of the way up. John Miller, we haven't, excuse me, we haven't had a aircraft fly into a building in New York, as far as I know, since just after the Second World War, when
The Empire State Building.
when it flew into the Empire State Building.
That's right. A B-52 flew into the Empire State Building then, and this is really the first time there's been anything like that since.
John, I was listening as you and Chris Isham, the head of our investigative unit, wandered up here to the rim just a short while ago to saying, one of you, I think, this is something they've been waiting to happen. Who are you talking about? What are you talking about?
What we were talking about is there's been a great frustration since the bombing of the World Trade Center, which the suspects later told federal authorities were intended to take the building down, that it didn't have a larger effect. And U.S. intelligence, FBI people for years have heard that they've always wanted to try and finish that job off, to take the buildings out, and that it was another viable target. Interestingly, ironically, whatever you want to call it, the World Trade Center just hired 2 weeks ago the head of the FBI's National Security Division for Counterterrorism in New York to augment and take over their security, pretty much aware of the level of threat that this is as a symbolic target.
One of the things that anybody mounting security in the World Trade Center himself will not be able to necessarily appreciate is what has happened at some distance. And there are a couple of reports, speculative at the moment, drifting around, including one on the Associated Press, which says the FBI is investigating reports of a plane hijacking just before the World Trade Center actually crashed. And John McWethy, our national security correspondent, is with us in Washington. John, what do you know?
Peter, we do hear that there was a hijacking. It is not clear where that hijacking occurred at this point, but it is one of the many things that U.S. officials are scrambling to try to get a handle on at this point.
Anything else, John? What happens at the Pentagon at a moment like this? I know everybody springs into action, but what do?
What happens is there is a particular counterterrorism cell within the Joint Chiefs of Staff that goes into an emergency basis at this point. They're investigating all aspects of air traffic in the area, all intelligence that, as they sift through it, may have given them some indication that something was happening. At this point, though, there were no warnings, they say, this morning. As they go back through this information, they may cull through it and find some clue, but at this point they believe there was no warning.
Thank you very much, John. Which would please call us back as soon as you have something which would call into question immediately, of course, the notion of counterterrorism in an incident like this. Now, nobody who's watching television, watching Good Morning America today, for example, saw, at least those of us working on television, saw a first plane crash into the building. Much of the country watching television this morning will have seen the second plane crash into the other tower. And we have, as you can see from a distance there, until we get our cameras on the ground producing material which we can put on the air, a pretty limited view. So we have no idea what the evacuation procedure is in the building. We do know...
We're listening in the background. At this time, all elevators are out in both towers, according to the rescue workers on the scene. They put out an urgent call for Scott air packs because they're climbing smoke-filled stairwells. They've got to go very high up to get to the target locations, and they're talking about people trapped in the smoke there.
And this, of course, is reminiscent of 1993 when the explosions occurred at the trade towers last time.
Exactly.
John, is it standard operating procedure? You mentioned that all of the other principal government buildings in the city, Gracie Mansion, the mayor's official residence, and some of the other buildings will be evacuated. Is that a fairly standard anticipated operation?
It is an existing plan that is on paper, but Peter, I have to say, it's never been put into effect in New York. This is unprecedented, and I think as this develops, you'll see similar plans go into effect in Washington and potential target buildings, because they really have to take the position that they're under some form of attack here, at least as a precaution, until they sort this out.
As we wait to get a better grasp of what now becomes a rescue operation of the people in the twin trade towers, we're reminded here that the U.S. officials, according to Pentagon sources, have no warnings today of any kind of terrorist attack. And if you listen to the news on a regular basis, you hear the Pentagon warning Americans worldwide of some impending terrorist attack. And here we are in the height of commercial America with no warning whatsoever, no intelligence whatsoever, as far as we can tell, at least in these first couple of hours.
No, and all of the latest intelligence, at least the basics of which I've been scanning for months, have focused on the high potential for attacks against American targets abroad. Indeed, federal authorities and the intelligence community have reported they've interdicted and interrupted more than a dozen of those attacks by shutting terrorist cells down around the world. They've always been worried since the first attack on the World Trade Center that there would be another bold strike on U.S. soil.
And, of course, there are any number of targets which have been high on counterintelligence's list in New York City: the Lincoln Tunnel, the United Nations, the Holland Tunnel, the FBI headquarters, not to mention all of the city civic buildings which John mentions. President Bush is, by the way, going to speak very shortly to the nation about this, and then he's going to return to Washington. And we have on the phone our principal aviation analyst and expert, John Nance. Good morning, John.
Morning, Peter.
What would you like to contribute to this? Because one knows that it is indeed possible to fly an aircraft into a building if one intends to do so.
If one intends to do so, that's correct. And unfortunately, when you've got something that has been as worrisome a target as the World Trade Center, regardless of the way we've hardened it up on the ground, they have apparently, whoever they is, picked the one vulnerable area. The thing that is most disturbing to me is not only the fact, of course, that there are people more than likely in that building that have been directly affected by this, but that we may have an innocent load of passengers. The flash of that second aircraft across the screen is disturbingly close to what you would call the plan form of an Airbus A319 or an Airbus 320, also of a 767 or something of that nature. And that's a large airplane.
John, let me go slowly with you, because, and we'll actually put it on the screen again very slowly so that we can see it come across screen. Are you able to identify specifically the type of aircraft by looking at this videotape as it comes across? Can we roll that, please?
I'm watching that right as it comes across the screen, and it is more than likely not a Boeing 737. That profile, Peter, is very close to an Airbus A320, A319.
And who flies the Airbus 320, 318?
We have quite a few airlines.
Okay, so
very few private ones.
All right, and John comports a little bit here with at least these initial reports that the FBI is investigating reports of a hijacking just before the second crash occurred. We had no... John, let me just ask you one other technical question about just flying in the World Trade Centers. When the first incident occurred, it was reasonable for people to suspect that that was an accident.
Yes.
From a flying point of view, is the World Trade Center always something to worry about if you're taking off for one of New York City's airports?
Not really. And the fact that we have had all these years since that B-25 crashed into the Empire State Building tells you a lot about the flight paths around New York City. You have to be so disastrously out of contact and off course, and so many things would have to go wrong to imperil any of the buildings in Manhattan. The fact that it hasn't happened tells us really how rare a situation it would have to be.
John, the FAA immediately asked for New York City airports to suspend operations. We can confirm that Newark and LaGuardia have closed down.
And Kennedy and Teterboro and Westchester.
Yes.
They've essentially asked all airports within a 20-mile radius to put a hold on anything taken off.
Teterboro Airport, which is in New Jersey, just on the west side of the Hudson River, and Westchester, which is maybe 40, 50 miles north of New York City. They're all suspended operations. Standard, easy to do, John, quick to do. It seems to have been so.
Fortunately, very, very quick to do, because they're all controlled by air traffic control towers, and they can put a halt to the operations with one phone call.
Okay, John Nance, thanks very much. Call us back, will you, if you learn anything.
Peter, one of the difficulties they're going to face, as you can glean from this picture here, is the people who are trapped and need to be rescued are on the upper floors, but you see the plume of smoke covers the roof. The last explosion was at the bottom of the building and the smoke rose up, but they were able to make a series of daring rescues by landing, and they've trained for this and retrained, landing police helicopters on the roofs of the Twin Towers and pulling people out. it's going to be very difficult, since the roofs are now enveloped in smoke, for the police helicopters, which are arriving at a landing zone now, just below the World Trade Center, to be able to get up there till that smoke dissipates. And that's where they had expected to pull a lot of people out this time, because they had so much success the last time.
Similarly, John, if you look at the two buildings, it does appear that at least in the northern tower there, or the left tower as you see it on the screen, below the incident, the building at least looks on the outside to be reasonably secure. And people will have a long, horrendous, terrifying walk down in a darkened building. But we'll at least be able to get out on the ground. By the way, Claire Shipman, ABC's Claire Shipman just called in. She's been checking with the FBI. She also says that the FBI had no warning whatsoever. Their crisis management operation in Washington is in place in conjunction with the Federal Aviation Administration. They are all now, which makes perfect sense, focusing on the recovery of survivors. The New York Stock Exchange has delayed indefinitely its opening today. This will just have not only an extraordinary effect on the national psyche, one surmises, dissimilar perhaps, but from what happened in Oklahoma City, but a very clear reminder to those of us in the United States that terrorism of a huge magnitude, with which we're somewhat more accustomed in the Middle East and in Africa, given the attacks on the U.S. embassies a couple of summers ago. But a reminder again that as far as international terrorism is concerned, and people's anger and even desperation on this occasion with the United States is going to find itself manifest here on U.S. soil. John, here's the president now in Florida. I wonder if everybody knows there what's going on. We'll listen to him.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I unfortunately will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary of Rod Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
President clearly shaken, I think one can say, confirming what we think we all knew, which was that two aircraft in an act of terrorism crashed into the twin trade towers. Nobody was quite certain about the first one at the very outset, but the president absolutely, having talked to the Vice President, the Governor of New York, the Director of the FBI, now believing and confirming that we have two terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, and the president saying the two things which a president must say at a moment like this: terrorism will not stand, which is an important thing for him to say, but not always necessarily effective, and God bless the victims and their families. John Miller, what are you picking up on the police radio?
There was a bit of a stir a moment ago because LaGuardia Tower reported urgently that there was another aircraft moving fast in the no-fly zone. Now they've contacted that aircraft and they say it's a military aircraft that's rushed to the scene to enforce the no-fly zone and literally be a presence in the area in case there is another plane headed for the building, so that there'll be some at least armed aircraft up to confront it.
Just think for a second, John, how you have drawn an extraordinary parallel. We think of no-fly zones as being in southern and northern Iraq, where the Iraqis are not allowed to fly, and if they do fly, are going to be shot down. Now we have a no-fly zone all around the lower part of New York City, and perhaps on the northern area too. All of the areas, airports closed down, and armed American aircraft in the air to shoot down anybody else who wants to take a shot at the place.
I mean, those are the reports that are coming across the radio now, and if they're true, it's quite incredible and certainly unprecedented.
Well, it would also suggest, as best you can tell, looking at it from this very sort of antiseptic environment that we are all in our newsrooms, is that the reaction has been fairly quick. New York City has an Office of Emergency Management. It's over here on the west side. It's a great bunker. Which the city
ironically, it's located in the World Trade Center complex, although not in the Twin Towers.
Just
right
north,
next door.
North of the Trade Towers,
right.
in the World Trade Center, in the other northern World Trade Center there. And on an occasion like this is not one they absolutely anticipate when they got going. They're talking very concerned with chemical and biological warfare. They've got extensive plans about that, which they very often demonstrate to the press. I'm going to interrupt myself and everybody else for a second because one of our senior producers, Mark Obenhaus, is on the phone, and he saw the incident. Mark, do you hear me?
I do indeed, Peter.
Go ahead.
Well, I was leaving my house to go to work, and I walked down the street to go to the subway. I was at the corner of Franklin and West Broadway, and as I was approaching the subway, a tremendous roar went over my head, and I looked up immediately, and it was a plane, and much lower than I've ever seen a plane in Lower Manhattan. And it was a large plane. I couldn't identify it as anything specific except that it was a commercial jet, certainly. And then my eyes followed it because this is approximately 15 blocks from the World Trade Center, and it just slammed right into it and was completely engulfed by the building. It was extraordinary. No wings flew off, nothing like that. It just went directly in, creating this sort of cavern-like hole, and suddenly then big flames started protruding from it, and then of course smoke, and then debris started just catapulting. And of course the area that we're in, there's a great deal of foot traffic, and people are just approaching and beginning to just gasp at just the sight of the building itself. Even if they hadn't seen it, the actual incident, the actual impact, just the sight of this huge building engulfed in flame with this massive cavernous hole in the side of it. And we stood there, I can't tell you the amount of time, I would estimate to about 15 minutes. And of course there's all kinds of services coming down, fire department and so forth. And then suddenly from my vantage point, which would be north of the building, the far tower suddenly explodes in flames. Yet again, a similar kind of an event. And I now see, I've run down the street to my home where I have the television on, and I saw that too was another airplane. From our vantage point, you couldn't tell what exactly it was that hit the second tower, but it was a similar, seemingly almost like bomb blast, and with flames and debris protruding wildly from the building.
Mark, let me ask you a couple of more specific questions. You now confirm for us, I think, that it was the first attack on the tower that you saw.
Yes.
What direction was the aircraft coming from?
It was coming from the north.
It was coming from the north down over Manhattan itself?
Yes. It would have been flying roughly over the west side. I'm on, as I say, West Broadway, which is probably a quarter mile from the river. So it was on a direct path north, from the north, into the north tower.
Do you remember whether it had 2 engines, 3 engines, or 4 engines?
I do not. It was very quick. It struck me, the profile, the body of the plane was of such scale that I immediately identified it as a commercial jet. It happened so quickly I couldn't tell whether it had windows on the side or what. It could very well have been some sort of a transport plane, but it was a large plane. As opposed to occasionally down here you do see smaller prop planes or smaller aviation stuff that flies around here, sometimes doing movies and things like that. But in all my years down here, and I've lived down here for about 20 years, within walking distance easily of the building, I've never heard anything like this, and that's why I just immediately glanced up and just followed the track of this sound and this huge plane that was swooping over my head.
Could you see any markings on it whatsoever?
No, I did not. It was too quick. I can't give you any kind of identifying help on what it was.
Do you remember what color it was?
My impression was that it had a tan coloration to it. However, the sun, it was very low in the horizon, and I think kind of orange, and it may have been simply the color of the sun reflecting off a silver exterior. I really am not sure of that.
Okay, Mark. Anything else? What's the mood in the environment down there at the moment? As if it's not hard to imagine.
And everyone who glimpses it close up, it's quite different seeing it from the ground than on these television pictures that I'm now looking at, because it's close to you and you see what the impact must have been like, and you see the kind of devastation that has incurred by the buildings, and it's just frightening is perhaps even too mild a word.
Okay.
It's absolutely just a horrible, horrible sight. It reminds you of the worst kind of effects in movies that, you know, you're reassured watching a movie that it's an effect, but this is not.
Well, Mark, you and I are supposed to have a meeting not long from now. We'd prefer you to go and work the story, if you would, and call us back as soon as you can.
I will indeed.
Many thanks. Mark Obenhaus, one of our senior producers on the phone, who saw the incident, describes it as a large plane, not sure what the color was, not sure the number of engines it had, which in his mind, he's a very experienced reporter, reflects the speed and surprise with which this aircraft, this is the first one we're talking about now, just before 9 o'clock, approached the World Trade Towers from the north, causing the first huge gap in the building. And Mark describes the plane being engulfed in some respects by the building. Didn't see wings fall off, saw it go absolutely, totally, almost as he described it, into the building itself. And we now have had one of the enormous difficulties about terrorism, everybody knows, is that you almost immediately get a claim of responsibility, and you may get several, and people's suspicions get ramped up given the obvious nature of people who they think are or know are involved in terrorism around the world. There has been a claim of responsibility, according to the Reuters news agency, made to Abu Dhabi television in the Persian Gulf from something called the Palestinian DFLP. The Palestinian DFLP is something called the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. It has been for many, many years one of the most militant of the Palestinian organizations, has been involved in violence before, has been involved in other actions before, and it is the first organization to claim responsibility for this, though we have to caution you in all the obvious ways that before the day is over, there may be any number of people who claim responsibility. The White House, of course, has leapt to the forefront of people's concern this morning, and there is a plane circling the White House at the moment, and they're clearing the grounds there. That's a report which may be misleading in that it may presume an attack, whereas we just discovered a moment ago that what we had with an additional airplane in New York airspace was a security operation. I think probably most Americans know that there is no building in the country which has heavily defended, I shouldn't say deemed secure, but a battery of anti-aircraft missiles on the top of the White House itself. We've had an incident, as you know, in the past, several years ago, where a small aircraft landed in the White House garden, and the pilot, mentally deranged, as I recall at the time, was killed. But the White House is certainly been very heavily defended, and this plane circling the White House adds to the trauma that people are feeling today, but we have no idea precisely what that means. John Miller, you're listening.
The scene is still in some degree of chaos, but the police have set up a major mobilization point just outside the building, and they've set up a tactical mobilization point. The major mobilization point is for the responding units involved in the rescue. The tactical one is actually an armed mobilization point for security outside the World Trade Center now.
Thanks very much. Let's go to the White House. Claire Shipman is on the phone. Claire, what's that we're looking at?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out right now. All we know is it's a gigantic plume of smoke coming from behind the old executive office building, and we're told that the White House itself, the West Wing, at the very least is being evacuated, that our personnel from there are being asked to leave. We've sent people running over there to try to find out what it is, but we don't know yet.
Now, the old executive office building is slightly to the west and a fraction to the south. So we are looking southwest from a camera just across Lafayette Park, which is north of the White House. The White House is to the left side, out of your picture. Maybe even the cameraman could give us some appreciation. But you have no idea, was that an explosion? Did you hear anything?
We did not hear it. In fact, we were trying to figure out from the White House what security precautions they were taking around the White House in the wake of the apparent attacks on the World Trade Center, and we suddenly just saw the smoke rising from behind the old executive office building. We have people on their way there now, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, we've never seen that kind of smoke coming from anything that would ordinarily occur here.
I must also tell you, Claire, I think if you think about what's behind the EOB there, you're really down in pretty open area. It doesn't look like a place where a building would be on fire.
No, that's right, although there are a number of buildings just behind the old executive office building on G Street that could potentially be on fire, but nothing you would necessarily think of as a target. Apparently, we're also...
Claire, let me interrupt you for a second. We now have fire confirmed at the Pentagon. John McCarthy at the Pentagon can hear me. John, please get in touch immediately if you can and brief us in there. John McCarthy has actually been evacuated from the Pentagon, and parts of the Pentagon are indeed being evacuated. We want to hold our breath here, it just seems to me, for a second, and not get into a mode that the country is under attack. But we now have 2 attacks on the Twin Trade Tower Center. U.S. buildings, city buildings completely evacuated in New York City. We have this mysterious black smoke at the southwest corner of the White House, which is to say there's something going on behind the old executive office building. We now have a report that fire has been confirmed at the Pentagon. ABC's John McCarthy, our Pentagon correspondent, who's been plugging in as quickly to the intelligence and counterintelligence units there this morning, has been temporarily evacuated. But that is as much as we know for sure at the moment. John Miller, go back to what you're hearing on your nets.
Actually, it's interesting. In New York City, they're reporting on what we're seeing here also, essentially trying to tell everybody that heightened security is important now.
John, I apologize. There's a lot of us here. What are we listening to there? Say again. Say again, please. Come here, John.
Reporting that bomb squads are checking out Air Force One.
Good. Try to correct. So we have bomb squads.
I think you're going to see a lot of this, and I think we were talking about this a few minutes ago. In fact, when I was telling you that in New York they were evacuating the municipal building, the United Nations, Gracie Mansion, which is the mayor's residence, all potential targets, I suggested to you that shortly in Washington you'll probably be seeing the same kind of reaction at sensitive symbolic locations. And apparently that's become more than a concern, but perhaps a reality.
Okay, we do know, or at least the Associated Press is now reporting, that an aircraft crashed near the Pentagon, and the West Wing of the White House, as Claire Shipman told us, was evacuated amid these threats of terrorism. I guess first of all, let me go to another eyewitness. ABC's Bill Blakemore, one of our senior reporters, has been an eyewitness to the New York incident. Bill, you on the phone?
Yes, I am, Peter.
Go ahead.
I'm down at 12th Street. It looks like we're more than a mile north of this very surrealistic site, and business has completely come to a stop here. Looks like throughout lower Manhattan, people standing in the streets, cell phones aren't working. A few of these phone booths, such as I'm talking to you from now, are working. One man just shaking his head said to me a few moments ago, I was supposed to be at a meeting in the building at 10:30 this morning, and then I saw the second plane hit the tower in this flash of light. There's a complete cessation of regular life. There's one delivery man standing here looking like he doesn't know where to go with this stack of beer crates. So all of lower Manhattan is just standing in the streets on this sunny morning looking at this unrealistic sight in front of us, this gray smoke coming out of the Trade Center.
Okay, Bill, talk to as many people as you can. Call us back when you can.
I want to let you know we're going to get back to ABC's special coverage, but we ourselves, what started in New York is now happening in Washington. We want to get more into that this morning.
That's right. I'm Carol Costello. Don Hudson. We want to go live to Sam Ford right now. He is live at Reagan National Airport with an update on the air crash at the Pentagon. Sam Ford, tell us what you can.
Well, Carol, as you can see, there's this huge cloud of smoke behind me, and that is the location of the Pentagon. We had come here to National Airport to, continue our coverage of the situation in New York because the airports had been shut down. No sooner had we gotten here and stopped the car than we looked up, and there was this cloud of smoke billowing from the Pentagon. There had been a traffic accident here at National, and a number of emergency vehicles were dealing with that. Then suddenly we saw this, and I would say within a couple of minutes they were all tearing out of here, heading toward the Pentagon. We asked folks here. One of the police officers told me that he had heard a plane had gone into the Pentagon. Obviously, more of the situations in New York. People here are extremely nervous, and some are saying that they wanted us to leave this area. We don't know if they're going to shut down the airport or evacuate this place. If this is a concern, at this point, people are still here, but there is concern about the safety of this place. Obviously, with these bombs going off or planes crashing into buildings all over the place. But that's it here. As you can see the smoke, and you can see, paper flying about. Yes, Carol.
Sam, a question for you. We understand that there is a tail section of a plane sticking out of the Pentagon, and a plane did hit the Pentagon. Is that true?
Well, at this point, Carol, we are at National Airport, so all we can really see is the flame. Now, I understand we have some photographers over at the Pentagon. I cannot tell you exactly, but from our vantage point, we see smoke.
Sam, if I can interrupt, we do have an eyewitness who actually saw this event take place. They're on the phone with us now. Is it Mr. or Ms. Gurman?
Mr. Gurman.
Okay, Mr. Gurman, tell us what happened.
I saw a big explosion, a ball of fire. My window rattled, and I looked at it. It was a big ball of fire and the smoke coming out. But I'm looking at it right now. It's missed the Navy Annex. It missed the Pentagon. It's like missed so many high-rise buildings. It hit probably a parking lot, or there's a cemetery behind the Navy Annex.
Mr. Gurman, did you actually see a plane?
I didn't see a plane. I heard the explosion. I thought it was a flyby because I live next to the airport. My window rattled. I looked out. I saw a ball of fire and just smoke coming out.
Are you feeling nervous right now, Mr. Gurman?
Oh, very much so. I thought I was hit. I mean, the building shook so much.
Well, you're not the only one, that's for sure. As we keep you on the phone, and Sam as well, we're now getting reports that the White House has been threatened here. We're also getting reports that Capitol has been evacuated, the West Wing of the White House evacuated to go along with all this. What started at 8:40 this morning, New York, is now threatening, of course, our city, our safety, and a lot of folks
and
very concerned.
The pictures you're looking at right now are from our live cameras. You can see smoke pouring near the Pentagon. Mr. Gurman, do you want to add anything? I can hear you're still on the phone with us.
I'm trying to get out of here because I live a few miles from the Pentagon.
Okay, you get going, Mr. Gurman. We understand. Thank you for joining us. Let's go to a White House shot that we have right now. The White House West Wing has been evacuated, as we understand. We know that President Bush is not there, but he is on his way back to Washington. You can see the armed guards on top of the White House keeping watch. But at this point, they, as well as we, don't know exactly what's going to happen, but everyone is on standby, as you might expect.
And as you mentioned, in case people are wondering and didn't see President Bush in Florida for an educational issue down there, he made a brief announcement about this and said he was on his way back here to deal with it, and of course saying that the terrorist acts will not be tolerated and that they will be looking into it. But after he made that comment is when it happened at the Pentagon. At that time, only the 2 planes had crashed into the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center in New York.
We wish you could tell you more about what's going on in our own backyard at the Pentagon. We don't know if there were any injuries. We do know there was a construction scene on the scene at the time. We do know when they heard something explode, they turned around and they started to run. We do not know if anyone inside the Pentagon or around it was hurt.
Okay, we have another person on the phone. Janet, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
We understand that you witnessed this plane, a plane crash into the Pentagon?
Yes, sir, I did.
Tell us exactly what you saw.
Well, I live in a high-rise building just outside of Roslyn, and I was actually glued to the television, and I have an office here, and it's all glassed in, and I saw a plane just coming right in front of my window, flying at a path that the commercial planes do not fly. Not coming into the direction to land at National Airport.
How big was the plane?
It certainly looked larger. Every once in a while there's a flight path difference for smaller private planes that come in. This was not a small private-looking plane. It looked more like sort of a commuter-type plane.
And you said
but it was sizable, yes.
And then you said it was headed directly to the Pentagon.
Yeah, it was heading in the direction of the airport, and I thought, this plane is way too low, and there's no runway that it goes in that direction, and it didn't turn at all. And I just, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was way too low and not on a flight path that I'd ever seen before living here.
Okay, and what did you hear?
I couldn't hear anything from where I am. I just saw the plane just disappear out of my sight beyond the trees, and then I just saw massive billows of smoke. And then a few minutes later, I heard it was, and it basically is obviously right where the Pentagon is. I can't see the Pentagon; it's covered with trees.
Are you in a safe place right now?
As far as I know, I'm in my apartment where I live, so I am on the 13th floor of a high-rise in Roslyn here.
Oh. We can see on the bottom right-hand corner of our screen, you can see the firefighters spraying at the Pentagon, trying to put out that fire. Jan, were you already aware of what happened in New York when you saw this coming?
Yes, sir, I was. I was glued to the television because I actually am running an event in New York at the end of the week.
Oh, you poor thing. Okay, we're going to go back to our Sam Ford, who's at Reagan National right now. We understand the FAA has taken some action. Sam, can you tell us what it is?
Yes, Carol. Because of this situation, the FAA has shut down all aircraft flights across the country. I think it is a situation where it is too dangerous. Right here at National Airport, you normally would have planes taking off and landing. There are no planes taking off or landing here. The skies are clear, and there is smoke covering the area. This gentleman is named Todd Nelson. You were just picking up what debris. What is it? Some sort of...
It looks like insulation. I was just standing here watching, and all sorts of paper and debris and insulation.
I'm sorry, yeah. This was what?
All sorts of paper and debris and insulation were just flying down, landing on us over here, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, some sort of insulation or some sort of debris that appears to have come from the Pentagon crash coming through the air. You could see papers flying through the air, things like that. So that's the word from here. We're hearing the FAA has shut down air traffic